when dropping into a new city and you want to establish your Gen Zero teammates, Timothy's, and pardon me for not articulating this question in a sharp fashion. Maybe I just bring it up as a topic, but I'm just going to share an experience of what has happened to me too often that I don't like. Okay, and funny thing, I've heard this question almost in 3 different forms from different people that are kind of asking me. So I think the Lord's trying to teach me something here. Let's say a scenario: you have 2 potential Timothys. Like everybody, there are challenges. So you begin, and it's not a real clear directional leadership thing going on where it's like, Pastor Daniel, I follow what you say it and I do it, sort of thing. We're growing together. We're partner priests, but you are trying to be the men. You do have something to teach them. Now you begin thinking, you bring them together. Are you greater together or not? Or did they cross-pollinate bad DNA? The other thing is, it's almost a quantity over quality kind of thing. Quality, you have a few, but you have a clear directional leadership in their life, and that's not that it has to be your way or anything like that, but it's just as you're starting this Gen Zero, you know how this network needs to develop. If there was someone that knew about it better, then you would be submitting to them. It's not an ego thing, but there's where you're going. On the other hand, there are a lot of potential partners. You could have more in a general way, or you could have a few in a more pure CPM DNA kind of way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so basically you're talking about who do you pick for your team getting started? And could a lack of common DNA be a distraction to the overall mission, the overall team? Or do you want to just take your time and develop a pure team in order to be more potent? And looking down the line further, it may take you a little longer, but it's gonna go a little smoother. What do you guys think?
I have a clear picture of this. Not that I know that much about it, but what I've seen is if you end up going with people, and I haven't done this myself, I'm somebody who needs more team members, but what I've seen is some teams that they're pretty inclusive in who they let in, and because they have a lot of relationships together, or they've labored together in the same town, and I've seen that the DNA it doesn't catch on real quick, and it's kind of mediocre, and it's kind of so that in itself will cause it to move slow, because there's not a lot of concentrated pure DNA, and so they're kind of changing things and doing things with less intensity or less direction, and so that can slow it down too. But what I did see that kind of corrected that was transplanting, taking those team of guys and putting them in another city, having them do a city project, and cross-pollinizing them with a pure DNA, and so that can direct that team that might be somewhat, I wouldn't say, I don't know, what do you call it, diluted, but then so it just kind of gets slow. There's a couple of people, but they aren't necessarily getting traction in the things that will really get forward progress. but there's a lot of activity, and I've seen that happens, and so that can make it go really slow too, even because you don't have the quality, and what you do doesn't maybe last or doesn't reproduce generations. But the cross pollination with some other training or some other laboring with another team, I think can correct that pretty quickly. So that's my experience with it. I see it as being a dilution, and it slows things down, makes things less effective, but can be corrected over time.
Thanks. It was a poor excuse for a question. It was more like a rambling. So
I
generally,
think it's important, though. This is an important topic.
Yeah, I'm just not asking the question very well. It's actually probably 4 questions. I just haven't even got this narrowed down to exactly what it is I'm asking. But basically, when you're thinking about kind of starting over and establishing your Generation Zero church or your team to reach a city, what is maybe the bare minimum you're thinking about? And what makes this complicated is it's not always an issue of bad DNA versus good DNA. It's undeveloped DNA.
Mm-hmm.
So you have someone that's growing, that's teachable. My goodness, I'll take them all day long.
Yeah,
that's not bad DNA. That's teachable DNA. You can get all of them together,
right.
No harm.
Right.
And again, this may sound bad or whatever, but the issue is the mentoring relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a mentoring relationship, bring them all together, no harm done. A lot of good's going to come from it. Don't let it go to your head, but but the reality is it's not quite like that, is it? There's a lot of partnering. There's a lot of courting. I'm going through Philippians, studying how Paul has this mentoring partnership role with the church. But that's one of the gray areas. The other gray area is the line team, not team, is also not clear. So let's say you have these 4 families, and that's what you consider your Generation Zero team. But it's not as if that everybody wears a shirt or something. You're all working within the city. You're working with other ministry leaders. And so there is, how do you instill a sense of DNA for that Generation Zero church? Again, I'm sorry, I'm not asking a good question.
No, I think I'm tracking with you, and I think this is super important. Let's go back to Jesus. I think that the first Galilean tour was done by himself. I think he went around preaching the gospel of the kingdom, healing the sick, casting out demons, and he was primarily alone. You do see the disciples going to the wedding at Cana. You see his family following him around, but he hadn't chosen his team yet. And so you kind of see this following happening. And I think this is one of the common mistakes of leaders, is they choose their team before they have a team. And you end up having to go through that really uncomfortable divorce by uninviting people to your team. And so you have to be real careful that you don't lay your hands on somebody too soon. It's really tempting in the beginning stages because you need a team, but you really have to keep those relationships casual until you prayed all night and the Father gives you direction. This is your guy, and then you make it very clear to them and to everybody else around you. This is what Jesus did. He chose the 12 and appointed them that they might be with him that he might send them out to preach and to cast out demons. So that happened after a time, and it happened very intentionally. This is the team. And, you know, you run the risk, you know, people are going to get the 13th disciple syndrome. Why did you pick me, man? You know, Jesus ran that risk, and it was for a good reason. The other part of this is that his team was not perfect. It had tremendous weakness in the team itself. And so you can try to get the perfect team, but not even Jesus had that. But you can, you know, mitigate some of the big, huge issues. Like if you get somebody on your team that's always undermining your leadership, you're dead in the water. So you don't want that. The other thing too is, as the team matures, you're going to have big bulls on your team. And they're going to lock horns with you. That's okay, because that's part of being a team. But if you spend more time locking horns than you do doing ministry, it's time to press on in new directions. And that's just the nature of the men and women that we raise. We raise some strong leaders. And I've done this throughout my entire ministry. Baby bulls become big bulls. And when big bulls are in the same pen with you, they start sticking you, you know, poking you. And they need to go get their own stall at that point. And so, you know, it's just part of the growing process. And we need to celebrate that. Okay, you're a big bull. Go get your own, you know, or I'm leaving. You can have this, you know. And I've done that several times throughout ministry. So I think this is really important question to be asking, thinking, and praying through, because it can determine what your trajectory is for the ministry for the next 2 or 3 years based on the people that you team with.